Hello and welcome. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach, the 8-year host now of Raising Athletes and the author of Raising Empowered Athletes, which is now coming up on its third year. I have been doing this podcast. I love interviewing other people that are in the youth sports space, giving tools and guidance and lived experience about how stressful, exciting, exhilarating, all the things the youth sports journey can be. Steve has interviewed me for an article in USA Today. He's been a longtime USA Today writer, but he's also written his own book now, Coach Steve's Youth Sports Survival Guide, How Parents and Kids Can Get the Most Out of Youth Sports. Welcome back, or welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast, Steve, and so excited to talk to you again.
Yeah, same with you, Kirsten. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so people in this world, and there's so many parents listening that are, probably on the front end of their journey. Some are in the middle of it. But let's talk about your journey, and then you are also raising athletes, and you can talk about that. And of course, we're going to get into the book too. But maybe let's start with you and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I think you and I were around the same age. I grew up in kind of a similar, just kind of a carefree kind of childhood sports experience, riding. I was just texting with a childhood friend, riding bikes around the neighborhood with no helmets on and riding in the middle front seat. But also those are obviously things that are dangerous. But yeah, obviously the sports, like played Little League in the spring, played soccer in the fall, played some basketball in the winter. Really developed a love for baseball and ended up playing that in high school. And then I ended up hurting my arm. I was a pitcher, and so I didn't get a chance to play in college, but I had a unique experience in that I went to Georgetown University, and I actually joined the crew as a freshman. There was no experience required in those days, and so I was able to do that for 3 years and really get a collegiate sports experience as well, which was completely different than playing baseball.
You remember how that came about? Like, did you see a flyer on a wall, or how did you get to crew?
I think Georgetown's one of those like kind of Northeast schools where crew is sort of an iconic sport. So you kind of see the guys. I took some summer classes before my freshman year, so you kind of see the guys walking around campus. And at the beginning of the school year, we had this big area in the middle of campus where they had a big racing shell out there with oars, and we're kind of recruiting. And then some of the, I lived in a dorm, and a lot of the guys on my floor went out for it. So I just ran down there at 6 a.m. one morning, and I guess the rest was history. I didn't end up doing it for 4 years, but I did it for 3 years. I felt like I really accomplished something, and then I was able to kind of transition into a more career path, my senior year, and socialize a little bit more, that sort of thing.
Well, and I don't know a ton about it, but I've had a couple of clients who are rowers, and you kind of have to have a love for pain, right? Like to be on an erg and or just the relentless, like there is no letdown, right?
None. And I think that's the difference between baseball. I mean, it's a different kind of fun, right? The fun is in finishing the race, maybe winning the race, but just really completing the workouts was the hardest, because it's year round and in college. And so in the winter we were on the ergs, as you mentioned, which are like these medieval, used to call them like medieval torture devices. You're basically in a room, going as fast as you can on a machine, a rowing machine, and then running up and down the iconic Exorcist stairs. I don't know if you're familiar with those from the movie that are in Georgetown. Those kinds of things. You basically tested your threshold of pain every day. And I was thinking about this before I came on with you. Like, one of my fondest memories of college is like sitting in the cafeteria with my teammates afterward and just talking about practice and maybe something funny like the coach said or a teammate did or something about practice, just getting through the workout. Those are the things you remember, as much as winning the races.
Are you still in touch with any of those guys?
Yes, I am. Georgetown's a school with a great network, so I'm in touch with them as well as a lot of my other classmates. But yeah, there's definitely a brotherhood, and I think even I was friends with a lot of guys who were a year above me. So yeah, I mean, I was just up in Philadelphia in the fall, and I had a ex-teammate who lives up there, so he and I touched base. Those sorts of things. Like I think when when you go through an experience like that, you have a bond that kind of lasts forever.
No, we at William and Mary there we were in the rec hall, which was above a swimming pool, and you'd get to William and Mary in Virginia in August in 85-degree weather with 110% humidity above the indoor swimming pool with no air conditioning. And you remember a lot of how you wanted to, you got out of the shower and immediately started sweating before you even walked into the gym. So you go through those wonderful, challenging, wow, I can do anything, which, when you look back on your experience and then obviously getting into parenting, but do you reflect on, you know, those like were, unfortunately, I feel like now kids, and because of the transfer portal, what we're seeing in college is you're missing out on a lot of those experiences when you're seeing, March Madness, you see this is his fourth school in 4 years or third school in 4 years. And you're missing out on not only the hard stuff, but the good stuff and the bonding and who are you going to call 20 years from now? Well, I kind of knew one guy from this school and one, like it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think those guys are completely missing out on that. And I think, when I played a sport like baseball, I think every kid has a dream, like certainly when you're in high school, that you're going to play at the next level and maybe even the next level. I think when I was doing a sport like crew, like I didn't think I was going to be in the Olympics at a certain point. So like you started, it's a new sport and you're just there for the experiences. And I think those definitely translate over. Like I remember, studying a lot in college, spending long hours in the library, and I mean that was that was kind of easy compared to like the workouts we were doing, and you'd walk around campus for your first class at 9 a.m. and you're like, wow, I've been up for 3.5 hours already, that sort of thing. And seeing other people walk by, and I don't know, there was something about that, you're like, well, I don't think maybe they went through what I went through this morning, and here I am going to class with them, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's just like, it was just the right experience for me. And I think, like, as you know, it kind of became more like a job. And I think when I was looking to transition into a career my senior year, I decided, it was kind of staying in the way of me getting internships and that sort of thing. So I felt like I got my fill of it and it was great. And then it was time to move on, which I think is what sports should be about.
Do you remember what your parents' point of view was? Did they care if you did it? Were they pushing you? Did they get involved in your decision making of whether you did a sport
It,
in college?
no, they knew I wanted to play baseball in college, and I did have a D3 offer, but I decided to go to the best school I got into, which is Georgetown, and my mom actually was a teacher there, so I had a massive tuition break by going there. So it was a good situation. So they were always supportive. They were always supportive of my sports, and you know my grades didn't suffer. I think it actually helped me really ration out my time and study when I had free time and that sort of thing. And I think it really helped me transition to college. So since that didn't happen, they were always supportive, and I made the decision to stop it after 3 years wholeheartedly on my own. After I did a summer internship in Florida, Pensacola, Florida, at the newspaper there, and got a lot of journalism experience, and I just felt like it was time for me to move into my career path.
I want to talk about the book, but we can get into I think how parenting has shifted, right, with this next generation of kids is we get so bought in at such an early age that we as parents, well, they're really good at baseball at 8, like they're definitely going pro, right? And we're putting the cart before the horse. Whereas I think a lot of parents my parents alike could have cared less if I played in college. If you want to, fine, but you're not. And my dad would say when I went to transfer, he said, well, you're not playing after college, so I don't care if you ever play again. Like, just go to the best school you can get into and get a good degree, right? So, but how far we've come where with a $43+ billion business, the focus has kind of been inverted.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think we all, when we have kids, we all kind of get sucked into that way of thinking. Especially, I have two sons. They're both in high school now, and I think with my first son, I was definitely more on top of him about things, and I think I backed off with him, and then my younger son has gotten a less intense version of me, and sort of evolved into a more holistic parent who kind of sees things from all different perspectives. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and I think it's so easy to get caught up in. I see it every day. I saw it every day with my sons growing up when I was coaching Little League and coaching other sports, basketball, and I see it at high school games. You kind of just want to go over to some of these people and say, just relax, or you don't have to say anything to your son or daughter during the game. Just enjoy them. I mean, one of my sons actually will say to me like, "Dad, just enjoy yourself. You don't have to film me or anything. Just watch, you know." And I
Aw.
try to take that to heart. Yeah.
Talk about your son. Your older son's now committed to go play in college. Can you talk about his journey? How did he get to it, and was it stressful, or has it been a joy the whole way?
Oh, definitely stressful, as you found out. I mean, I think early on in his life, when he was about 8 or 9, I felt like I was pushing him too hard, and he actually said to me something like, "Dad, I don't like baseball as much as you do," you know, something like that, and that really made me pause, and I just kind of backed off a little bit with him, and kind of kept putting him in it, and just we tried the travel when he was around 10, 9 or 10, which looking back on it, maybe even a little too early, but we all do what everyone else is doing. But I think he always was in an experience. We moved around to a lot of different teams. I stopped coaching him around 13 or 14, and he's gotten a lot of different experiences with different coaches. We got him into a good travel program with where they kind of put them in front of college coaches, and I made sure that he was wanting to do what he was doing, and I try to have that conversation with him a lot. He's a left-handed pitcher, so that makes him fairly marketable. Like a lot of these kids who are baseball players are really caught up in how fast they throw, and he throws hard, but he throws hard enough, and he's really a pitcher. He works the count. He pitches around different parts of the strike zone. He throws off speed pitches. So we were in a tournament in Atlanta, and he was doing his due diligence with coaches, and one of them, the schools, which is known as LaGrange College outside of Atlanta, reached out to him around the time that on a mailing list around the time that we were down there, and he started communicating with the coach. He ended up having a good tournament. The coach saw, Prep Baseball Report like retweeted him, and so the coach saw that, and that's kind of how it led to our visit. And I don't know if they actually even saw him play in person, but it was just kind of a right place at the right time.
What
He had a
advice?
couple. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was to say, what advice do you have for parents that may be in the middle of that or in the front end of it, as far as did you do it the right way, or would you do things differently? How did you feel like that process went for him and you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance between how much comes from you and how much comes from them, and I was trying to not make it stressful for him with, you need to fill out this questionnaire, you need to do this, you need to do that. I was trying to keep that part for him, because I felt like if I was doing too much of that stuff, it became more like schoolwork. I wanted him to be the one that was interested in reaching out to schools that he wanted. So I think maybe I was a little too on top of him about maybe that part of it, but at the same time, there's a balance, and he kept saying that he wanted to play in college, so I kept pushing, I kept working with him to achieve that goal, and as hopefully, and I know as when he gets to college, hopefully, it'll be something that works for him. It's very intense. They've already told us there's 6 a.m. lifts and that sort of thing. So, it's not for everyone, and we'll see if he can get through it.
But right now he's excited, and he's excited about the team and the guys and the coaching staff and everything at school.
He's very excited, and in fact, what's really exciting for us now is both of my sons are on the same team for the first time ever. They're both. I have a sophomore and a senior, and they're both on the varsity. Those are the kind of things you're always, as you're traveling around to different events, and one of your mom, my wife goes to one, I go to the other, and we have one game to go to now in the spring, and they're both on the same team. So
Yeah, we had 3 year age difference between our boys, and so we never had that, and that was always kind of like, wow. Our younger was a freshman and 5'8", 115 pounds soaking wet or whatever. So it was like, okay, you're not playing varsity, but so you never got the opportunity for them to play together. And what a gift that is, just to be able to see them in uniform together and support each other, right?
oh, it's terrific. In fact, they had one game where one started and one finished in the same game. We won, so that was
Aw.
that was against one of our big rivals. So that was exciting. I think my wife and I were kind of like taking that in, like, okay, we need to really enjoy this. I'm not, it may not get better than this. It may, hopefully it will, but this is a moment we need to really, really appreciate.
Yeah. Any injuries? Or they both been healthy? Touch wood.
So far they've been healthy. Growing up they had some overuse stuff. I think this is a good tip. Like we've all been, they were doing like the winter workouts and they were playing in the fall and the spring, and they were also playing basketball and flag football. But I think just a lot of lot of like repetitive baseball activity. They both had to deal with an overuse injury when they were both around like 12, 11, 12. That we had to just, with just pure rest, we cured that, and growth plates, growing a little bit more. But since then, knock on wood, they've been healthy. They're very
How important sleep is for them, right? And I think we forget, and I know these kids have 6 a.m. lifts, and I go through some of my clients' schedules, and they're busier than pro athletes are because they've got school in the middle of it, right? Which is hard to manage all of it.
It is, yeah. I think they actually do a much better job with sleep than I did. I was one to kind of burn the midnight oil, both in high school and in college. And they are both really good about getting their 8 hours or so of sleep, or even a little bit more. Especially my older son, when he's pitching, he'll go to bed at 9:30. And
Good for him.
yeah, I mean, it's a balance. Sometimes my wife and I wish she would study a little bit more, but
Oh, prioritizing sleep over school.
yeah, but to each their own. Like he found his niche, and good for him. And
Yeah,
I think this will be his college opportunity will be a great opportunity for him.
yeah. And is it far or close enough that you can drive to games and be able to watch?
It's actually, we live in D.C. and it's in Atlanta.
Oh,
However, it's a 1 hour and 15-minute flight, and it's
okay.
1 hour from the airport. So I've done the trip a few times. So
Okay.
and they play in the spring, so I should be able to get down and see them. And I think there's a certain autonomy that they can have too when you're away from them. That's important. So hopefully there'll be a good balance of that.
Yeah, my boys both went to the East Coast, and I'm in LA, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's so sad. You don't get to go to the games." And I mean, now everything's streamed, and same. I feel like it's also a good opportunity for them to do their own thing and to learn and grow from it.
And that's another thing about college and playing college sports. Like there's just so much autonomy, right? You have to kind of do it yourself. Your teammates are there, but you're kind of pushing yourself. Your mom and dad aren't around. They're not taking you to practice. They're not You're not coming home and talking to them every night. I mean, you might call them frequently, but it's really your own experience, and I think that's really important for any athlete.
Yes. So let's talk about your book. So I know you've been a columnist for 20 years. How many years?
Well, I've been at USA Today I started in 1999, so I guess 2020, it'll be
Close to
27 years in August. And I've done just a variety of roles, mostly in sports, some in news. I've been the editor of a baseball publication. It's actually called USA Today Sports Weekly, which still exists today and does multiple sports, not just baseball. I've been writing this column for 3 or 4 years. March 2023 is when I started. And the interesting thing about it is that it sort of happens so organically, which is what you want work to do. I think my boss found out that I was a coach. She knew I was running off to practices, and so she kind of, they were looking to get into this area, which, as you know, is booming. And so they asked me if I was interested in doing this, and I said sure, and kind of took it off from there. And I write a weekly column called Coach Steve, or Ask Coach Steve. And the cool thing is, with USA Today, I was able to get a lot of sports celebrities to talk about, raising their own kids. And so it's just been a really neat experience. And I have a lot of those in the book, from Shannon Miller to Annika Sorenstam, to just a lot of other famous, athletes who are not very, very different from us, trying to figure it out like we are.
So cool. Annika Sorenstam, I remember watching her when, like, she's I think same age, but her process seems to be very, like, are there ones that stood out around what made them successful? Is it that different from the others, or?
I think she, interesting about her, she's from Sweden, and I've written about this recently. I'm sure you saw the documentary about Norway with the Olympics, and Mary Carrillo did that, just about how they kind of free play until they're 13, and no one really worries about what level they're at or even organizes them that much. And I think she had a lot of that growing up in Sweden. And she did skiing, she did tennis. She actually told me that golf was boring at a certain point. But I guess she realized I think it was like a kind of a confidence thing. She realized that she was good at it, and that's when she sort of pursued it. I remember one of the interesting things she said to me was that she used to actually tank when she was younger to finish second, so she wouldn't have to give a speech at the end of a golf tournament. And then her dad kind of had a talk with her about it, and he was nurturing. He said, we don't have. He gave her a few tips on things to say. I let my clubs do the talking, that sort of thing. Easy stuff. And then that was a way that she kind of overcame her fear, and that's kind of when she took off. So I mean,
Oh, that's cool.
very human that we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Agassi, I wrote about him in my book too, and a big fan of. I loved his book Open, right? Like such a
Oh,
great,
so good.
amazing storytelling. If you haven't read it, listeners, you need to listen. You need to read it or listen to it in a car ride with your kids. There's just so many times he talks about like, for as storied and renowned as he is, and legendary as he is, like most of the book is about him not succeeding, right?
And not really enjoying himself, which is really a key point with kids. Like his father like was determined to make him a star, and the best, and he was. But like, at what price do you pay for that? As a 5-year-old hitting against the dragon, I think he called his machine, his ball machine in the Arizona desert, or sorry, the Nevada desert. I mean, it sounded miserable, and that's not at all what sports is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the opposite.
And then getting shipped off to Florida to play, against his will. And he said he felt like he was sent to prison, and he thought, okay, I only have to be here for 6 months. And then he called him and said, oh, good news. He's so good. I'll let him stay for free. And he's like,
Right.
I felt like the cellar, the prison door was slammed in my face. I wasn't going to I was 12, I think, or 13. I wasn't going to get to go home and play with my friends. I was going to be here becoming, something I didn't even know if I wanted to be.
For sure. In fact, I think he says he liked soccer better, and he said he
Yeah.
loved playing soccer and running around. And I guess his dad saw him one time and pulled him off and said, "We're not doing this anymore," sort of thing. So much
Did
to be
he
learned.
did he talk about because Steffi, his wife, Stephanie Graf, has a similar had an
Yes.
upbringing, right? So what I've read about them is they both said to their kids, whatever you want to do, right? Like you guys, and one's a baseball player, and I think one doesn't play sports or
I
something.
don't
Like
know if
they,
she even plays sports, but I
yeah,
think, yeah. He said, basically the key word is choice, right? We give them a choice of what they want to do, but when they commit to something, he says, we hold them to their end of the bargain. Okay, this is something you like to do. Let's do the best we can at this. Let's put our best foot forward, as opposed to forcing something upon them that they don't want to do. I mean, I find it. Don't you find it interesting that neither one of them plays tennis? I mean, you know,
yeah, says everything about their experience, right? And then
yeah,
when the father was interviewed, his dad Mike was interviewed years later. Do you have any regrets? He said only one, that I didn't make him play golf because he could have made a lot more money and he could have played for a lot longer.
yeah. Didn't learn anything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's lucky. I mean, Andre had his ups and downs. You can look at that side of him too in his life. Before he became. I mean, he really hit his stride when he was much older, 35. Close
Yeah.
to 40. He had his early career, and then he kind of peaked, and then he had some issues with abuse, and then he kind of righted himself and became who he is today.
Not dissimilar. I mean, I don't know about the fall, but when the ice skater, she just won gold in Cortina, Leah, I think her name is, who she walked away from the sport at 16 and said, I'm not doing this anymore. And then 4 years later comes back having not skated at all, but says, I'm doing it my way. I'm going to skate to my music. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. I'm going to do the routine that I want to do, not you, Dad. And how empowered she was to be able to go. She said skating for fun and skating to have a really good time and enjoy myself, and how that completely changed her experience and her results, by the way, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you watched her gold medal performance, it was absolutely like she actually looked like she was absolutely having fun,
Right?
and
Yeah.
she yeah nailed her routine. I mean, it just looked like someone who really wanted to be there. Whereas Malanen, I wrote about that too. That poor kid. I mean, I'm sure as a parent you watch that too. I just felt so bad for him when he was
Yeah.
out there. He had put so
Well,
much
being
pressure.
a quad god, right? Like
Yeah.
to have this label of, okay, this is what you're going to do, pressure.
Yeah, and he admits it was kind of self-inflicted, but that's what happens when you put kids in the. And I mean, obviously they're very talented and they're in the Olympics, but kids in that kind of spotlight, that's a lot of pressure, even when they're the best in the world.
Yeah. So what are the big, so we can get everybody to read the book, because I know
Mhm.
this is, again, such a big topic. What are some of the big things that you're covering in there that would be helpful to parents who are on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to look at it as a parent, as much as a sports writer, obviously, like, just kind of questions that we all have, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, when is the right time for doing a travel team? Like, how do I know if my coach is the right coach for me? Like, how do I know if my coach isn't doing what he or she should be doing? You know, what is it that keeps kids playing sports? Like, I tried to get at kind of the fundamental issues that I've faced and that I've written about, that other people are facing, and try to really get at the fact that it's really not about winning and losing. Obviously, we all love to win, and the best athletes in the world and the best coaches in the world, like Corey Close, for example, who I just interviewed, who won the national championship.
Are you
I didn't just
kidding?
interview her, but she just won the national championship. I've interviewed her, and she's in the book, and she talks about, yes, like, she hates losing to USC, right? But at the same time, like, it's, you can see her. She's so connected to her players, and they love playing for her, and she loves every experience she has with them. And that's the message I try to get out to them, to try to get out of my book. I mean, she mentioned to me, I'd love to ask her this if I talk to her again. She mentioned that she talked to a coach who won a national title, and she said, "How does it feel?" And the coach said, "Empty." So, which is
Oh,
really interesting. Yeah,
right.
because it's over. All the fun is over, right?
Yeah. Although I know she also went to John Wooden's apartment a lot and sat at
Yes.
his
Yes.
knee and asked for his advice. And 11 national titles later, like, he wasn't chasing the title, he was teaching. He was there to lead. He was there to make good men, right?
Absolutely, and that's such an interesting aspect of her story. Like, she so appreciated the fact that he took the time to talk to her, and he was older, and she would go and talk with him about strategies and what he did, and he loved youth coaches. He thought that youth coaches were really important. He called them teachers, like himself, about teaching kids right and wrong, and I ended up talking to another one of his players, who told me that Wooden wasn't really animated on the bench. He would sit there and watch. Like, they would go over things in practice, and then he would sit there and watch them execute them. He wouldn't call that many timeouts. Like, he was really into, and I have a separate column about Wooden. He was really into just kind of, let's see how this goes. Let's see who's putting forth the effort, and he would reassess in practice, and he wouldn't get too worked up like you see, all basketball coaches doing today on the sidelines.
Although Dawn Staley, like, in the national championship too, like, I just admire her so much and how she shows up and the levels that she's gotten to and her success. Like, and listen, even in national championships, we're down to that point. We've put in the work. We're either gonna, figure it out. I can make some coaching, adjustments, but I can't change. Me yelling at you isn't gonna. Although that's an interesting one too. Like, I've seen people post both sides of that. There was just recently a female coach that got in her player's face in the middle of the game, and people were kind of having a go at her about it, saying, that's not coaching. And then, yes, then the other side is, well, they need, a good kick in the butt, so that's exactly what they need to do. How does that net out for you, and what coaches you've interviewed and what you see works?
That's interesting, actually. I think you're talking about Brenda Fries, the Maryland
Yes, yes.
coach. I've interviewed her once, but I text with her husband from time to time, and I've quoted him and I've quoted her in stories, and so actually I wrote about that. And what's interesting is that the first thing that she says to her player, which is her star player, she says, "I believe in you," but I think that was the key to that whole interaction, right? And her player said, "Okay, I like to be coached hard." And she said, "I need you to live for this moment. I need you to be in this moment more than you are." I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, when you get to a certain level, high school, college, like, maybe we expect a little bit more out of our coaches to get the best out of us. And I'm not necessarily condoning yelling, but I think that's intense coaching, and I think that's getting the best out of your players. And I think that was one of the most viral moments of the NCAA tournament. And I think for the most part, she came out pretty much on the good side of that. I mean, certainly when I wrote about it, most of the comments were positive about the way she coaches. And I think her players really enjoy playing for her. And when I interviewed her, I talked about how she makes it, she considers it a great responsibility to kind of mentor these kids, and their parents are trusting her. And, she has them over for dinner at her house, and they do things away from the court. So like they see that's the intense side of her on the court, but they also see, the person that she is, and that she's trying to make them into like kind of better individuals. So that's a full coaching experience there, I would
Yeah,
say.
and I think if you have the trust first with the athlete, and again, I like parenting. You can't. I've got 3 kids. You got to parent each kid as an individual, right? You can't just copy paste. So same. Maybe she's not yelling at, the 5th person or the 6th person on the bench the way she's yelling at her starter. But if she's built the trust and said, this is, I think, what you're going to need in order for me to get the best out of you. And they say, you're right. Okay, buckle up, right? Like this is how we're going to, and then the other juxtaposition that came about was on the men's side, which was Dusty May and Dan Hurley. Like they were also opposites. And I saw a lot of writing about that too, and how they're both amazing coaches. And I forget who it was, one of the UConn players said, I came because I wanted to be coached hard. Like that is what works for me, which bringing this back to youth sports. And if your kid's on the recruiting journey, I give that as one of the most important things to figure out as you're going through the recruiting process is what is their leadership style? And does that fit with how your child or you, if you're listening to this as an athlete, like to be coached, like to be led? Because if the guy's throwing the chair on the side of the court and you really don't like people getting in your face, like there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to doing your research on, what programs are a fit for you, and as you said, what coaches are a fit for you. I mean, the Brenda Fries incident, that was like I think you mentioned this. She actually said, she actually thought of that's like a few years or however long they've been together. That's a lot of time in the making. Like, she knew that she was the type of player, as you said, that she could do that too. That was used to that sort of coaching, whereas you wouldn't do that to everybody. Like she said, okay. Like it seemed like it was a knee-jerk reaction, but it really wasn't. I think Brenda Fries' sister, who's also a college basketball coach, came out and said, that's my sister's superpower. Like she can determine exactly what each athlete needs from me, what kind of coaching she needs. But that's something you also need to determine. Like, some coaches like to yell, and we've seen them in high school. As long as at the end of the day is if they're supportive of your kid, I'm okay with a little bit of yelling. I think it can get excessive, but you got to know like what you can handle. And I think it's harder for kids these days to get coached like that. I mean, I've seen a lot of we see some complaining from time to time because parents aren't used to their kids being coached that way.
And I think that makes a great leader. I mean, I used to talk about that at Nike a lot, which is, are you a manager or a leader? A leader can flex to different people's styles. A manager has a style and you flex to mine, right? So great leaders understand this player needs this player needs that. It doesn't mean I'm going to completely flip who I am. I'm going to stay who I am, but I'm also going to be aware of what each of you needs in order to get the best out of you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think if you're a youth coach, I mean, that's something you can think about, right? I mean, if I could go back, and coach, I would probably do more of that. I think when we're in the moment, we don't think about stuff as much like that. But that's so important is kind of knowing who you have and getting the most out of all your players and putting them in situations where they can succeed, and also not excluding them. I think that's a big problem with youth sports is too much exclusion of the players who aren't the strongest players on the team. I think if a kid is involved on a team, he or she should be involved, should get playing time, at least up to a certain age before high school.
Agree. And if they're not, you have them on the roster just to give the parents the happiness to say they're on the ones team, that's not the right reason. They need to be, I mean, my belief is every youth sports coach should be developing the player. And if the player is a Z level player, if they get to be an X level player by the end of the season, you won. Right? If they're an H and they get to be, a D level player, you won. But what's happening is you see the ABC level players who, of course, it's great to coach the super talented, super athletic, early developers who don't really need much coaching. So it's easy to focus on them. But if you can actually develop each player on the roster, that's amazing coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look back on my youth coaching, my happiest moments are when the kid who was really struggling earlier in the season came up with a big hit in a playoff game or something like that, or just did something that helped us win. You know, you know that's so much more important to me than obviously you want to win and you want heroics from your best players, but and you appreciate those and you appreciate everyone on your team, but just seeing the kid who's struggling, get to find success is really the most rewarding part of youth coaching for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting too when you look at it from the coaching side, because I was coaching just 9 and 10-year-olds for 3 or 4 years, but trying to be in the parents' shoes and then the child's shoes around, you can tell pretty quickly whether the kid is into it or not, whether mom just signed me up or whether, you have the one that's in the gym early that's like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Like they're just so hungry. And the other ones that are like, oh, I've got matching hair ties with my friend and they just want to be there. And that's okay too. And we've kind of this one size fits all. They're all trying to get, to college or even to the high school team anymore. And I don't think that needs to be the case. What the life lessons that they can learn by being on the team, by being on time, by being a good teammate, by, do you talk about, I'm sure you do, go deep into some of those life lessons too?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Obviously, like when you're coaching and when you're playing, for me at least, I didn't see a lot of that. I did, but I didn't. Like you don't think so much about teaching these kids life lessons, but I think as a writer and reflecting on this, I put a lot of that stuff in the book, and I think more about like what are kids getting out of this experience that we're giving them, even as they get into the high school level. I mean, high school they don't play. A lot of kids don't play. But like I think a team experience where they're working hard in practice, they're supporting their teammates, they get an opportunity from here, here or there. They have pregame meals together. They have all these experiences together. That makes them better people and more socialized and just more complete human beings. And that's important too. Like not everyone has to be a star, and I think that's an overlooked part of sports.
My son Parker, who's going to be a senior at Colgate, the team, the Patriot League, they've dominated, I think, 5 of the last 8 years, but the last 2 years they haven't won the title. And when he was a freshman, they won and they went to March Madness and they have 5 guys in the portal. And so he called a team meeting and he said, there's only 3 of us in this group that are left that were even part of a team that went to March Madness. And he played a little video from when they won. He's like, I want us to go back there. What is it going to take? Who do we need to become? How do we need to sign up for right now in April to get there, a year from now? And I love that he said, and I wrote down my goals, and he's been injured all year. He's like, I wrote down my goals and I put them really, really high. And even if I don't achieve them, and even if, he's like, I put down, I want to be first team all conference. I want to be player of the year. Even if I'm not player of the year, I want to go down, swinging kind of. I want to make sure that I put everything out there and basically who's with me. And to the leadership from within, for them to actually own it and take it from the middle. I'm rereading Legacy, right? And the great story of how the All Blacks and them sweeping the shed, them saying, if we're going to win anything, we all need to take accountability and responsibility, not the coaches, but, this is talking about a little older. I don't know if this is happening at the high school level, but definitely at the college level is leadership, to your point. Not everybody's going to be the star, but everybody has a role and everybody has an opportunity to make an impact. And I would guess those teams, at least I know after the UCLA win, when they interviewed Gabriela Jaquez and said, well, how did you know you were going to be here? She said, well, we all stood together on the first day and said, we are going to win a national championship. Like, that's what we're going for. We have no control over whether it actually happens or not, but we're starting the work today to make sure we give ourselves the best opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and that's really cool considering with the transfer portal and everything that you've talked about. I mean, I love to see that kind of thing. Like I see some of it with my son's high school teams where they're kind of having a lot of team meetings, like, guys, we can do better than this. And the great thing about college sports is that everyone's there and really invested. And I think if you're not really invested, maybe you should find something else to do. It's probably not worth your time. That's kind of the way I felt after 3 years. I mean, I was all in for 3 years, and then I said, okay, I'm going to do something else. Because that's how you develop, and that's where your leadership qualities can come from in those situations, far more than you'll get out of being successful. It's like kind of the journey to be successful, which is what UCLA experienced, and hopefully your son will experience too.
Exactly. And again, the life lesson of, even if they don't hang the banner next year, the fact that he took a leadership role for himself, to like, that's growth. Like, that's probably more valuable than winning the trophy, right? Like, it's, I've done that before, because then he's going to need to do it when he walks into his first job. He's going to need to apply those same principles again and again and again. So those are the life lessons that I think youth sports, and then getting to play, if you're lucky or want to play at the next level, it's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you do that. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts where you really try to pull out things from sports that can help people in life, and I think that's so important. And as an athlete, to think about those sorts of things. Like, how is this going to help me? In a job interview, like, you're used to communicating with people in a work environment. I mean, obviously, everyday work is not all glorious. You have to do a lot of teamwork and work with people, and that's so important. And if you don't have that skill, that's hard. Even in a world where a lot of it is digital. I mean, I still interact with a lot of people every day, through messaging and emails and some phone calls, and so it's important to communicate and be on the same page. It's how we function in our society when it runs right, at least.
My older son, who's now graduated from grad school, and he's trying to figure out what's next, and he's been coaching the kid that lives around the corner, out in the front of the house, and he's like, I think his dad, works in film, and I actually really would love to work in film. And I was like, awesome. Have you talked to him about it? He's like, no. Like, seems like a great, hey, this is what I've done. This is what you're doing. And again, maybe he's not inviting you in, but he's got to have 2 or 3 people for you to talk to. Hey, go talk to so-and-so and so. Great. And then use those 3 people to go ask them for 3 more people, right? And that's what you needed to do when you wanted to go play in college, right? Oh, yeah, I had to talk to these coaches, and then that coach told me to talk. It's the exact same process. And what an amazing learning. Okay, I've done this before. This is a muscle I can build. And by the way, you're going to need to do that for the rest of your life. Like, that's part of, hopefully being a contributing member of society and growing and wanting to get better at whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my son's going through something right now in high school where he, like, the seniors go and they work like in an office or something for a month before they graduate. So, he's been going through that process of sort of getting up his courage to reach out to people and that sort of thing. And that's I'll mention that to him. Like, you communicate with your teammates all the time, with your coaches. Like, just do it, I mean, I remember being, hesitant when I was around his age to speak to adults, but once you do it, you realize it's not that big of a deal. And
then most of them are parents who also want their kids to succeed. So they're thinking they look at you and they see their own child and think, well, if somebody asked, if my kid wanted to ask them, like, would you help them? Of course you would, right? So it becomes a pay it forward. Yeah, how can I help? And then he's like, he said, yes, no problem. So after I work with him tonight, we're going to have a talk. Awesome, right? Like, it starts to take off from there. Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I'm excited to be with you in person in a couple weeks. We're going to be in Boston together at the Aspen Institute's Play Summit. So if anybody's on the East Coast, I think it's sold out, but I'm so excited to I think it's going to be amazing to meet all these people that are working on helping in this space, and it's such an important thing. So I can't wait to meet live with you. And then I think we talked about before, but I would love to have you on after we're done, and we could do a live and talk about what we learned at the conference and kind of both of our experiences, and share that too.
That'd be fun. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Meeting you in person after all these communications we've had.
I know. It's going to be great. All right. So one last question before I let you go. How would you finish this statement? I like to ask my guests, the best athletes I know do this?
I would say that they are able to move on to the next game when it's a bad game, move on from failure. I think that's
Be a
like,
goldfish. Is that your Ted Lasso quote? Do you have that in there? That's how you quoted.
I can't remember if that's one of them. I do have a whole. There's so many good ones. I think I have 15 of them in there.
Oh well, yeah.
And be a goldfish is a good one. Maybe that's similar. Actually, you're right. Be a goldfish. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
A goldfish has a 5-second memory. Move on to
Yes.
the next game.
Next
You know,
game. Yeah.
the best athletes do that. And
Mhm.
kids struggle with that a lot. I mean, I talk to my sons all the time about after games if they don't go the way they want to go. We just got to move on. Learn something. You tried your
Move on.
best. Go to the next game. The best athletes do it. No one has a great game every game.
Nope. Where can people find you? Where's the best to read your article? Obviously, USA Today, or where send them to the best places.
Yes, usatoday.com is where you find my column. If you want to order the book, it's coachsteve.usatbook.com, coachsteve.usatbook.com. And it looks like this if you want to.
Thank you so much for making time. This is so
Yeah,
great, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, and we'll plan our next adventure together.
sounds great, Carson. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. All right,
All right.
parents, like, share, follow, go buy the book. We got this.